Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to announce someone who is truly at the intersection of data engineering and product development. Our speaker today is Utkrista Casey, a data engineer at Antler in Sydney. Utkrista brings a unique blend of expertise in product engineering in data, which allows her to design scalable, data-driven solutions that not only meet technical needs, but also align with business objectives. She's passionate about using data to solve complex problems, and today she'll be sharing some of her expertise in a very exciting area, leveraging Google Gemini, querying databases with natural language. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you for the introduction. Can you guys hear me? Is it clear? Okay. Thank you everyone for being in this talk. Today we'll be talking how we leverage Google Gemini in querying databases with natural language. Before I get started, I'd like to give a shout out to Geshan Mananda for his mentorship and support for this session, and let's get started. I am Utkrista, as introduced. I'm currently working as a data engineer at Antler. Talking about me, I have done master's in IT with specialization in AI from UNSW. I started my career as a software engineer, and now I am a data engineer at Antler. Talking about Antler, today we also have VP of Engineering, Steny, in the room, who is at the back. So thank you for your support, Steny. Steny is a VP at Antler. So talking about Antler, Antler is a global venture capital firm which invests in early stage founders. It is located across 30 different cities around the world and across 6 different continents. It has residency programs designed for founders, which is a 10-week program that provides dedicated coaching to the founders in terms of co-founder matching, business model validation, and many more. So if anyone of you is interested in applying for the residency program, we do that have in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. They are starting. You can scan the QR code, or for more information, visit antler.co website. And let's take a look at the agenda for today. Today we will be analyzing what are the challenges with the traditional database querying, and then how we can leverage Google Gemini to bridge the gap by transforming the natural language into SQL queries. Then we'll look at the demo and some of the key takeaways. First of all, let's think of a situation if asking a question about your data set was as easy as asking a friend for advice. Like, how does that feel? Easy, right? You do not need to worry about the syntax, what to write. You can simply communicate in your own language. So we can have the similar comfort of asking question to our database. We'll come back to this later. So broadly, the database is classified into SQL and NoSQL. Like SQL includes the structured data, whereas the NoSQL includes unstructured or the semi-structured data. SQL has a fixed schema, whereas the NoSQL has flexible schema, and NoSQL can be, like SQL stored in table and rows, whereas the NoSQL can be stored in documents, key values, graph databases, and many more. NoSQL complex, like horizontal scaling is easy in NoSQL database, whereas the complex, it is complex in terms of SQL. However, there are technologies which have implemented the horizontal scaling, which some of them are Vitis, and there are many more there. Now let's see about the types of queries that we have. The first one is if I want to know what are the top 5 products by revenue last month. This one is a simple English language query. So in this hall, how many of us have written queries in SQL or any other languages? Hands up. We have a lot of us here. So I'd like to show, here is the same query that we write in SQL syntax, and the other one is a snippet of the MongoDB that is a NoSQL database. Like this all gives the same result, but in natural language we are more used to in English, so it might seem it's much easier. So other one is who uses this SQL and NoSQL databases. The first one is data engineers like me who maintain and design the database, likewise the data analysts who generate insights from the database, and the software engineers who build software solution in solving the business problems, and also the data scientists who build models and predict around the data, and many more users like they use on an everyday to-day basis in their work. So let's take a quick look at the challenges that we have with these traditional methods. Like for a non-technical person, it takes some considerable amount of time to learn this databases and how to query with that. Not just that, in a business scenario, like for the non-technical person, like there is a limited access to the data. Like when they need some kind of insight, it has to go through the process, and they have to rely on the engineers or the database experts to get the results. Likewise, even for the technical person or database experts, to generate some insights, it is time consuming. To write the queries, it takes some time. And the data in a company, it might not be at the same place. Marketing data can be in a different software, and operational data can be somewhere. So to write a query, it is not easy. Like to have everything at one place, it's not that easy. And as humans, we might have like errors in the queries. So that will lead to less accuracy in the results. So these challenges highlight that there is a need for accessible and more efficient way to handle the data. So we talked about the need for a new approach. That is, we need the data that need to be accessible to non-technical users as well, which can enable the faster decision making in a business scenario. And it will also reduce the technical bottlenecks in a way that these engineers, database engineers, or experts can focus on other works rather than some ad hoc queries that is needed in an everyday day-to-day basis. So we can leverage any LLM models in this scenario for translating the natural language into the SQL, but today mostly we'll be focusing on the Google Gemini. So let's take a look at what is Google Gemini. So Google Gemini is a multi-model large language model. Large language models are trained on a vast amount of data so that they could generate the text like humans and then have a communication. And multimodal, they have a multimodal understanding. That means they can understand text, video, audio, and images. Likewise, they have advanced capabilities of understanding the human language, summarizing, and reasoning. So if I'm here to get started in which model to use for the Gemini, so there are a lot of options, like 4 options as of now. So which one do I go for? Like if I have a complex task such as mathematical reasoning, then I can go for the largest model, which one is Ultra. But if I want to use for a scenario like where I want to use in a mobile device, then I can go for the Nano model. And for a generic use case, I can go for a Pro model. And if I need something that is lightweight and faster, I can go for a Flash model. Flash model has 2 variants, that is 1.5 Flash and 1.5 Flash 8B. Like 1.5 Flash 8B is mostly used for lower intelligence tasks. So here are the options. Like the complex the model, high computing power is required, so more expensive the model is. These Gemini models operate on a freemium model basis. That is, we have some limitation on the free model, and if we can also opt out by paying this model for our uses. When we use the free model, then our data is used for the training purposes, but when we take a paid model, our data is not used for training purpose. Now, how to get started? So we can have interaction with this Gemini model in different ways. One can be going to aistudio.google.com and directly interacting with the web interface. Other one could be generating an API key. That is going to, this one shows like how we can generate an API key. We go to aistudio.google.com and get an API key. And we can even, it's simple, like select a project or existing project or a new project, and then create an API key in the project, and then we can get started. Likewise, there are other ways too how we can get access to this Gemini model. And let's see how we can utilize this Gemini in bridging the gap from natural language to our SQL query. First of all, we have a natural language query with us. And then we pass this natural language query with a prompt. And this Gemini model, as a result, it generates a SQL query. And then we pass this SQL query to the database, and then a result is received. Like, it seems seamless, right? It's easy. Like, we pass our query, and then we get the SQL query, and then lastly we get the response. So where we can use this approach? We can use this approach in different sectors. Let's say in a finance, if a non-technical person want to know where the top performing stocks in the last 6 months. Like, they did not rely on the engineers to get that, so that they can directly get the data, and then they can even make informed investment decisions in that case. Likewise, in a customer support scenario, let's think what are the mostly reported problems by the customers. So if we could get that quickly, then the business can proactively work on that so that we can increase the customer satisfaction in that case. Such as in retail too, we can know the market trends, the top sold products last month, so that the business can work on the marketing strategies, modify the inventories, and then scale up their revenue. Likewise, even in healthcare, we can directly get the patient's data, and if we want to know which patients have the rare disease or anything, like, we can generate the insights quickly, and there are a lot more possibilities and a lot of sectors where we can make use of this approach. So before moving on to the demo, I'd like to mention that the dataset that I used the Billionaire Statistics dataset of 2023, and it can be found in Kaggle. So let's look at what I built, and then we'll get into how I built and what is there. So let's look at a demo where we will be querying the Billionaire's data and how the SQL is generated. And yeah, let's see this. Okay. So first of all, this is the interface that is built, so that I'm giving this simple question, like, give me the information of the top 5 billionaires. According to the data set, maybe we are familiar with some of the names here, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and all. Like, we can directly get the data here. Let's say we even got the data, and there's an interpretation of the data, like the dominance of tech, and like 3 out of top 5 billionaires are from the US. Like, this kind of insights can be generated from the data itself. So for a non-technical person, it will also even aid in making better decisions. Let's see a different query. Let's see. Now tell me the top 10 billionaires in Australia. Like, does anyone have idea, like, who are the billionaires from Australia here? So let's see that. As for 2023, here are the top 10 billionaires from Australia. So this is the SQL query generated there by the Gemini model, and we can see Gina, Andrew, Harry, and the information, what are the industries they're working on, and the country of citizenship as well. Like, we have our data of the billionaires, and there's the interpretation of the data. There, like, it says that metals and mining has the highest dominance, and also we can see that Perth and Sydney are the hubs for all these billionaires. So like, Perth and Sydney have more concentration of the billionaires. Like, this one is just a simple UI. Like, I had pre-written some SQL queries, so to check whether the results received from the Gemini is correct. Like, it's correct, the SQL query is correct, and there's no differentiation between the results received from the SQL query that is pre-written by me and the Gemini. So now let's see, list the billionaires under the age of 30. Like, who are the billionaires who have built great wealth? Since this data set is from 2023, so it is calculating the age from the year 2023, like who were under 30 at that time. So we can see the data, like, and the country and the industries as well, like who are the top like billionaires who are under age of 30. We can see Kim, Luca, and many more. And in the interpretation of the data, we can see like the significant number of these billionaires are from the fashion and retail industry. That means a lot of people are like billionaires around the globe under 30 are in the fashion and retail industry. Like there are other insights associated with that as well. Now let's see which industries have how many number of billionaires and which industry has the highest number of billionaires as of 2023. And so I'm asking here like how many billionaires each industry has, and if I wanted to be sorted by count, then I can even do that. This is a SQL query generated by the Gemini model, and we can see in the result that finance and investment has the highest number of billionaires, followed by the manufacturing, and then technology and fashion and retail. Energy has 100 number of billionaires, telecom has 31. There's even gambling and casinos which have decent number of billionaires. Likewise, there's the interpretation of the data as well. It will break down by industry and then provide some insights. Like it says that top 3 industries are from finance and investment, manufacturing, technology. It highlights what we got from the data. Lastly, let's see one more query, like which country has the highest number of billionaires? Any guesses before we get the results? Okay, so let's see what data set has to say for this. So we are querying like which country has the top most billionaires. So this is a great generator, yeah, and you all were right. If they guessed United States has 754 billionaires, followed by China with 523, India with 157, Germany with 102, and United Kingdom by 82. Like these are the top countries with the highest number of billionaires. And in the interpretation too, we can see the United States and China are dominant. We can see there as well. And even it mentioned about the European presence, and yeah. We can even see the ASEAN, like Asia also houses for a large number of billionaires. Like these are the queries that we did in the database, and Gemini generated the results. So let's, So what technologies I use for this demo? I use Python as a programming language. For building that web UI, I use Streamlit. And for the database, I use the SQL database, which is relational SQLite. And the package to interact with the Gemini, with the API key, I use Google Generative AI. And let's see how the demo works. First of all, the user, as we saw that, we input from the Streamlit app, and then it passes to the Gemini Pro model. And then we have sent our query with the Gemini Pro model to generate SQL query so that we pass this query to the database, and then the result is received from the database. And then this result is again passed to the Gemini model. And then finally, we have the SQL generated, the data, the Gemini interpretation at the last. So with this demo, there is like Google also has done a SQL Talk project which is related to this. It is an open source project which uses function calling features. That is this project. It generates query in it works with BigQuery so that any natural languages are translated into that. To explore more, we can even go through this link, Google AI Data Exploration Agent. So why the function calling feature? Actually, most of the LLMs do not produce they do not produce consistent output. Even with, I think we have experienced that, even we write a good prompt, every time the outputs are not consistent. Other one is they're stagnant in time. Most of the LLMs, if you ask what is the currency exchange rate, then you might have got the answer, like of today, then you might have got the answer. as of this date, I do not have knowledge on this. You can refer these sites for the most of the LLMs. So for overcoming this, we have function calling feature in Gemini as well, so that the model can also interact with the external APIs and retrieve data from that. And it also produces a consistent JSON output, so that there is no differentiation between the output generated previously and now. So with this feature, I also wanted to experiment with that. Earlier, we were making simple queries and they were just billionaires data set. But what if our business needs more scalable feature? Like the data set is complex, it has more relationship with the tables, and we don't want to provide all of the information about the schema. So in that case, this function calling feature can be used in that case. So it can interact with multiple databases at once. To experiment that, I also used another complex data set with more relationships, and then use this different function calling feature so that the model on its own generates what information we have in the tables, and it gives information on its own. We do not provide any schema information. So in terms of scalability, if the data model changes in the future, this comes handy. So I will not have a demo for this, but I'll be providing you the QR code where I have implemented this feature, the function calling feature for translating the natural language into SQL queries. I'll be providing a GitHub link and the slide link. Towards the end of the slide, you will see a short clip on how that was implemented. Yeah. Finally, the key takeaways from here are, we can use this approach so that data is accessible to everyone, even the non-technical users. We can reduce the technical bottlenecks, we can reduce the reliance on the data experts, even for generating a simple insight that might be crucial to the business. And with this AI-powered tools around the market, why not to simplify our job? So it accelerates data-driven decisions. Finally, data should be accessible to everyone, and it should help the business in making data-driven decisions. These are the key takeaways. So here's the QR code that I was talking about. If you would like to connect to me, there's a link, and there are slides in this link. Likewise, the GitHub repository where I created this demo along with both of the, I have the demo, I have the code of the billionaires data set, and also what I was talking in the function calling feature, that is having multiple databases connected and without providing a prompt to generate that query. So this is a link. Now it's time for the questions. If you guys have any question, please ask me.
Any questions, guys? That was a brilliant session.
I guess if you wanted to productionize this, you would have a new kind of SQL injection risk, in the sense that you would traditionally, a 90s web app might sort of let a user say, okay, I want to select something from the database, and the server goes and runs that, and then the client sort of injects some SQL that's malicious. Now, could it be that someone's figuring out how to prompt this thing that's going to create a SQL query that's then malicious to what's actually executing it in the back end?
Okay, thank you for the question. In terms of injection, for writing the queries, there's a threat, but obviously we can ensure have some safeguarding around that as well. And this one is the prompt. Our SQL queries are generated to the database, and then we pass the prompt as well. But in terms of some injection attacks, we can have some safeguarding that we can do some sanitization around that. Whatever it generated, we can add one more layer before going through the database. We can have a sanitization layer. So whatever as Gemini has created, it won't do we might let's say in that way. Let me rephrase it. We're going to think of the case that it might not generate injecting SQL code, but in that case, let's add, while moving to production, let's add one more layer that sanitizes the SQL query that is generated, so that if any threatening is generated, that we do not pass through our database. So that there we add one layer. I think that would help resolving that.
Yeah, you'd want like the user account that talks to the database to only have read access to something. It's very unlikely that people will be that responsible, I guess.
Yeah, like do you mean that you want to access to different, have access to other data as well, which you do not want to show the user? Do you mean in that way as well?
I was just pointing out that regardless of sanitization and all that sort of stuff, the user account on the server that talks to the SQL database, you'd hope that it has just read-only access to the database. Even if they manage to get some weird thing that also has drop tables, the account wouldn't be allowed. But usually developers are lazier than that.
No, we have to care on that. We need to implement that. We need to have, let's say, a backup of the database so that we can only backup of the database so that we only give read-only access to the users. That is the most essential. We cannot give any update or create. We cannot let them run here. So, any more questions?
Any other questions, guys?
Sorry, my question was actually quite similar. I was just thinking about data security concerns, especially because it kind of happens in OpenAI, where they actually spit out the private. But when it comes to our private database, is there any concern about memories or I don't know, just a general question. Thanks.
Okay. For the company's database, do not I think you are not going to use the free model. That is, when we use the free version of the model, it uses for the training purpose. So let's not use that for a company's purpose. Let's use the paid version so that it will not use for training purpose and our data is secure in that case. So that would solve.
Yeah, no, I mean, just trying to share what I've understood is, because it's a big query, so I think it's limited to the data query languages only, so it does not execute those data manipulation languages. So if you're trying to insert the data or update the data or delete the data, you can't do that one. So this is just my understanding. I could be totally wrong, but what we normally do is we feed in this data set, like the billionaires of the whole world, and you just type in some plain English language rather than running those SQL queries, because not everybody is a table brand. They just want to query the data set in a very layman's terms. So what it only gives you the capability is to run the query language, not the manipulation language. So you can't modify the data set in any way. That kind of, I think, limits the possibilities of data, how do I put this, corrupting the data, or I'd say.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just my understanding, and the BigQuery does what it does is it kind of adds an additional capability of analyzing, giving inside the data. So it's just pulling the top 10 billionaires in Australia, and the Google, what it does, it adds a bit of additional insight saying that, okay, 4 out of those billionaires are from the software companies, and I think that's all it does. But that's just my...
Yeah, but if we would like to even add this interpretation layer, that is, we are passing the data and the query for the interpretation. So in that case, when we use another version of the model so that our data is not used for training purpose and it is secure in that case. If you want to add an additional interpretation layer, in that case, the model has to look at the data and then analyze the relationships around that while providing the insights. So in that case, use a different model so that it is not used for training.
Yeah, that kind of capability is by the library that you use, I think.
Yeah. Definitely.
Any other questions?
That's right. So did you reach some limit on the complexity of your natural language query? Obviously you did. How complex would you make your query?
Okay, as per my experiment, like it does even generate the complex queries. That is, even if we do not give any like schema, what is it has around the tables too, it can generate the relationship between the tables and then do a join. Like it's simple prompt, but it analyzes all the tables, all the foreign key relationship between them too, and then generates the results. For me, I would say that it can generate complex queries as well, but if there are some other scenarios where the queries are very complex even for the database engineer, like they're really complex, so in that case, for now, I would not suggest this, but for lower to medium complex queries, it does that, and I think it would be really helpful with those insights for a business. Like that would solve the business problem in that case. But it is highly scalable. Like even if the database model changes, we can integrate in a way that it understands on its own what are the changes that are there in the schema as well and derives the results. Yeah, thank you. Any more questions? Yeah. Sorry?
I'm curious about how do you verify a query accuracy?
How do we verify the accuracy
so
of the...
it's gonna generate SQL query, right? But in my experience, it run a query that executable, but it's not correct because in SQL query, it's quite complex more than people other think. Like a small change could make a big change in the results. So how do you know that results from the query without any data analyst or any verification? How do you know that is reliable?
Okay, thank you for the question. For that, before we generate a commercial like application or in a business scenario, initially we have to do the testing on our data set as well, like what kind of queries can be executed, and we have to even analyze the output, and some testing needs to be done before it is released or it is used for uses. So in that case, I'd say we do the testing and we know what the limitations are based on our database modeling, what we have done. So I think that would solve, like, we know the limitations of the model. Right now, too, even with these LLM models, it generates highly accurate results, but we are known about their limitations. In that way, while developing, we have multiple test cases where we test around multiple scenarios, and we know what we are building and what our model limitations are, and we can improvise with time as in that case. So we have to do rigorous testing before releasing. Yeah.
I wanted to ask something. So what are the limitations that you faced when you were creating this, like even the demos? Like, what sort of limitations or like difficulties were you having with like maybe integrating the SQLs or like with the AI?
Okay. Since I was testing with the free version, so there are limitations around the rate request per minute. I used the Gemini Pro 1.5, so it had 2 requests per minute. So I recorded a video so that we do not lose time in that. Other one is like, for the first one, I use a prompt so that if there are larger prompts, and sometimes in that case, it does not return the response, so we have to try the next time. So I had that kind of limitation while building. Like if the prompts are larger, so I have to even optimize the prompt. Mm-hmm. So it is not always the case, but these were the challenges I faced while developing.
Okay, so the model needs to learn from the prompt again and again so that it can sort of like...
Yeah, one of the demo that I showed is from the prompt, but for the other one is I have used the function calling, so the prompt is really shorter. It will analyze based on our query all the tables so that the prompt of the schema is not associated with that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All good?
Thank you.
Hi. So, how's like the AI like using the train and test split, right? How's like their implementation of the SQL query of the train and test split?
Thank you for the question, but I could not get What is the split? Can
Okay.
you rephrase that for the SQL? I understood that the train and test split is there, but the question
It's
regarding the
basically
SQL
follow
query.
up from the accuracy thing.
Yeah.
And how do you like check on the model itself that it's the accuracy was like very, how do I say it, high, like high accuracy
On the results. Okay, how do we test that?
Yeah.
Okay, initially, well, building, because now it was a simple data set, so that every results that I received were like highly accurate. I even tested with my manual SQL queries that I wrote. So that in that case, they were highly accurate, but we can do a certain set of queries for a testing purpose as well. We can have those edge cases in the testing so that we can test again. We can write the queries manually and then test against the results or the like results generated by the Gemini and the result generated by our manual query, which is correct. Let's suppose that. In that case, we can test what is the accuracy. But for now, like simple data set, it was accurate. But for the complex scenarios, that might vary. So we have to like do that kind of testing so that we know how accurate our model is in terms of handling the edge cases.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Any more questions? Yeah.
So why don't we convert the dataset query into the data frame and use pandas instead?
Sorry, data set into?
The data frame, like we are using pandas.
Yeah.
So like technically, can you explain me why don't we use that?
Why do we use?
Yeah, why we want to use SQL to use querying to do any database querying task instead of pandas?
Sorry, I did not, like, why are we, is the question, why are we using pandas or why are we using the SQL query?
Yeah. Instead of that, like, why don't we use pandas, for example?
Okay, that is to, like, I have used Streamlit and to display that like results into rows, like there is a table, right? So if I use a data frame with that Streamlit, so that table appear nice. For that case, I use that pandas. If you are talking about the like code that you referred to. Is it your questions or did I answer? Is it not the question that you asked?
Yeah, we'll talk with you later.
Okay.
Any more? We'll do that. That's the last one.
Okay.
Can you generate page instead of like those tables, like visualization instead of data?
Yeah, we can do. Now you could see only the text interpretation generated, but obviously this model is capable and other LLM models are also capable. We can definitely generate some visualizations around that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank
we
you
can
so
define that in our prompt.
Thank you so much, Utkrista.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Utkrista, for your insights on the practical use cases and limitations. Really helped us understand how to implement Google Gemini effectively. Let's all give her one big round of applause.